Bruce Lowry Chevrolet is celebrating 100 years of family ownership and giving you the best deal on your next vehicle. From the 2022 Chevy Silverado Crew Cab with 1.9% APR for well-qualified buyers, to the 2022 Chevy Equinox with 0% APR or $1,000 cash allowance. Come see us at 711 Southwest Loop 820 in Fort Worth or visit BruceLowryChevrolet.com. Bruce Lowry Chevrolet. Find new roads.
30 years ago, Hurricane Andrew slammed into the South Florida coast, and Warren Faidley, a storm chaser and storm photo journalist, was there to experience it. He wrote out the storm in a parking garage, really just like this one. He's credited as being one of the first, starting in 1987, to be a full-time storm photo journalist, and he wanted to be there to experience this massive storm. He went expecting adventure and came back having experienced one of the worst natural disasters to hit the United States in recent history. Here's my conversation with Warren Faidley.
Warren Faidley here. Thank you so much for joining me today to talk about the 30th anniversary of certainly one of the hurricanes that I think will go down in history as something that we've learned from, but also something we kind of hope we never really have to experience again. As I mentioned in the last interview that we did, I've watched a lot of your footage and kind of followed some different parts of your career. And I know that Hurricane Andrew is definitely one of those marks kind of on your timeline of just a huge event. So I just wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit about your experience then, as well as kind of what you've learned since then and kind of what it's been like to see the years go by with the past other major hurricanes that we've had and kind of how that's compared. So tell me just a little bit, if you can just kind of tell the story of what made you decide to go take on Andrew and what it was like to actually be there on the coast when it came through.
Well, I had already started chasing tornadoes probably 3-4 years before 1992. Actually, I started in 1987. And I thought, well, I'll go down and try a hurricane. And I had chased Gilbert and maybe a couple of other storms in between. But Andrew was a monster. I mean, there was no social media at the time, so you couldn't go back and reference, there weren't many chasers. You couldn't go back and reference other chasers or get advice on what you should do. So this was all new. I mean, finding a parking garage to stay in and survive. A lot of chasers do that nowadays. That was all new. This had to be created. There were only a few other people, Jim Leonard, Richard O'Rogner, and a few other handful of people who were chasing as much as I was as far as hurricanes go from that point onward. So there wasn't a lot of information to go from. So you had to kind of go there. And fortunately, I had a lot of journalist experience working for newspapers. So I knew a little bit about surviving. And the few years out tornado chasing, it also made me kind of wary of bad weather and take some extra precautions. But I knew Andrew would be different. And all the reports that were coming in about storm surge and winds and destruction made me think, I bet the only place I can survive this storm is in a very sturdy building. And something like a parking garage would be perfect because it would be like a fortress where I could move around different angles and actually shoot out of the building as the hurricane was going on.
So, you've made this decision to go and to take on a storm that I assume at the time was being forecasted to be as major as it was. I guess that would be a question. What was the kind of the pretext of that storm like? Was there, do you think, sufficient warning of how strong the storm was going to be, or were there any surprises as far as when it actually came in, or was the, I guess, the predictions at the time, were they kind of on the mark, and was there a lot of appropriate response?
Well, the predictions were right on the mark. People knew this was going to be a serious hurricane. And even back in 1992, there was rumor control. You'd see it flash on the TV, call this number for rumor control, because people were beginning to come up with all crazy things. The whole Florida Peninsula was going to be under 10 feet of water and crazy stuff like that. And then you had the other side. I'd go into a restaurant for breakfast and people would be saying, oh, why are you here? This is going to be nothing. It's going to miss. It's going to wimp out. So there were all these rumors and thoughts at the time of what it may or may not do. And again, we didn't have social media. There wasn't a lot of hype. The only place you could go really was to local channels. which did a very good job at the time. So I think people were aware. There wasn't a lot of panic. I don't think they understood the magnitude of what was going to happen completely, especially in some of the areas that got struck the hardest. But I think people began to take it a little bit more serious when you could see this thing on satellite hitting. You knew it was going to come into South Florida. You knew it wasn't going to wimp out. You knew it was going to come in. I think people began a little bit later than usual to take it seriously.
You mentioned, there wasn't social media, and you're exactly right, because these days you have people throwing up their, GFS models that are, 20, 25 days out or however long, and it's like the other day, in fact, I was looking and there was one GFS resolution that actually had a large hurricane taking a near identical track as Katrina. And I thought, oh, good. This is exactly, and there was actually two hurricanes at the same time. And I thought,
I saw that.
This is a perfect example of just a hysteria factory. And my head was in my hands going, I'm going to be answering so many questions I'm not going to get anything done for the next 3 days because, I'm going to be dealing with this. Yeah. So, it's probably a little bit of a blessing, maybe, because at that time, I think that the lack of social media may have made it easier for there to be, like you said, there's this phone number of rumor control. Man, I think we need that now more than ever, because social media, there's total equality in the free market of ideas on social media. You get the opinion of somebody who got to the coast yesterday and has never been in a hurricane versus the National Hurricane Center is on equal footing these days, it seems like. So it's interesting to hear that, the lack of social media kind of, how that affected the response back then versus kind of what we see right now.
Yeah, we haven't had a monstrous, really a devastating hurricane since probably Katrina and Andrew. Those were probably, if I remember right, the two big ones, at least down in the Gulf area. So it's going to be interesting. We have another one threatened. I mean, a real serious Cat 4, Cat 5 come in. It's going to be interesting because the social media phenomenon of people hyping it up, it's really just started in the last few years. So when you have something threatening now, it's going to be absolutely crazy to see what people are going to be saying before it hits. And like you say, there are people forecasting hurricanes now before they've even formed, before there's even a depression or something, or a wave in the Atlantic or the Gulf, which is absolutely insane. But that's just part of the evolution of social media. People are going to have to be very careful what they listen to and the information that they receive.
So take me to, we've talked about the expectations of the hurricane and your decision to go there. So take us through, you arrive in South Florida, you're getting ready for this thing, gearing down, and just kind of take us through what your preparation on site was like before Andrew arrived.
Well, when I arrived, it was more of a carnival, if that's the right word to use, atmosphere. For me, at least in 1992, because I hadn't experienced a hurricane like Andrew. So for me, it was very exciting. I thought, wow, this is going to be cool. I'm going to go up in the garage. I'm going to shoot this thing. And then I'm going to come home and have all these pictures. But it was a good lesson. It was a humbling lesson because it was a lot stronger than I thought it would be. And there was a lot more dangers involved. I've still got scars on my hands here from just leaning out the side of the garage to shoot. There was glass and things. And I'd bring my hands in. I saw blood just from pieces of glass. And I thought, well, I'm certainly glad I didn't go out there and just stick my face out there. Right. But yeah. I didn't. There was no references. Nobody had really went out as a journalist and shot a hurricane like this. So I had to kind of make it up as I went. But the atmosphere, being a journalist, I knew what I had to do. I went and took some pictures of areas for before and after photos to try to line it up afterwards. As I still do nowadays, I did a gigantic recon mission. I checked every building out. I looked for escape routes. I looked for areas that would provide maybe the best views with the palm trees and things like this, or the boats out in the marina. So I went through and pre-planned this thing extensively. Even back then, I have to pat myself on the back because I was aware enough to know that this was going to be different. It was going to be dangerous. And as a journalist, I had to pick the right location that I could both shoot from and hopefully survive the storm.
So you've gotten there and you're excited. Yeah, I mean, I won't lie. I'd probably be in the same position. I'd be hyped up. I'd be ready to go. This is really neat. This is really crazy. But, I can imagine, having heard your descriptions over the years, that the experience itself, like you said, it was humbling. So, tell us what was it like when Andrew arrives and makes himself known, and you're, riding it out in that parking garage. Tell us what that experience was.
Well, I guess the biggest fear I had was that Andrew was going to occur at night. And I hate that. I've actually avoided going to some of the big hurricanes we've had here because I knew they were going to hit at night. And as a journalist, I want the action photo. I'm the guy in the surge. I'm the guy out there in the hurricane. So at night, you're really limited. You can shine a light on some palm trees and then get them swaying and do some other things. That was my biggest fear. It wasn't about my own personal safety. It was about, as a journalist, with a camera, I knew at night I wouldn't get those images I had envisioned of this hurricane. So that was my biggest fear. And it did. Most of it hit at night. And as it approached, we could see in the distance, we could see power flashes from lines arcing. The wind started to pick up a little bit. In some ways, I thought about this yesterday. Not seeing it was interesting because I had to go completely by sounds. So my senses were centered on sounds instead of visuals. And you could hear something like a can rolling down the street. Mm. And as the winds picked up, you would hear the wind in the power lines. And little by little, it built up with this crescendo of just absolute insanity. All you could hear was the wind and just things falling apart. And I remember waiting and thinking, oh man, is this thing still going to be going when the sun comes up? And fortunately, there was probably little less than an hour when the sun came up and I could shoot. There were still feeder bands coming in that were strong enough. I mean, they'd knock you over, but they were strong enough to get some of the images that I accomplished. So as a journalist, I was happy about that. But, night falling hurricanes, or as someone who's looking for visuals, is not a good thing for me.
Now, were you in the location to catch the eye, or were you kind of on the edge? What was your location in relation to?
We were in Coconut Grove. We were right in the eye wall, right in the eye wall with the 150, I guess 170 mile per hour. There were gusts that were, I think, at least 170 miles per hour. It was insane.
So did you go through the eye in between?
No, we weren't actually in the eye. We were right. Gotcha. I picked, and that's always the other thing. And, any hurricane chaser will tell you, you want to be in that eye wall. Or some people want to be in the eye because you're going to have the hurricane come over you twice. I want the onshore action. I'm all about the surge, the wind. I want to be where that wind that's coming in on that right quadrant. I want to be there. I don't want to be on the other side where it's offshore. I've been there, and that's not me. I want to be there in that core and experience the worst part of it.
So you're in this parking garage, and when I visualize that in my head, you talk about you're leaning out and getting pictures. All I can think of is that it's everything you can physically do to remain upright and remain in the same location. I mean, I can just imagine that there might be kind of a wind tunnel thing going on. I guess it depends on kind of the construction of the parking garage, but how were you able to maintain physical stability long enough, to get those pictures and to accomplish what you were there to do?
At the height of the hurricane in that garage, even though you had some of the Venturi effect where you have the compression of the winds, but even if you tried to go outside, which I did a couple times stupidly, I wanted to see where the storm surge was. So I walked out there with a pair of goggles and tried to be you couldn't stand, you couldn't walk out the edge. The winds were so strong, it would have knocked you down and probably carried you away. It was physically impossible. Someone said, I'm going to give you $1 million to cross the street over to the other garage. I couldn't have done it. And I probably would have been hit by something. But the winds were so strong, definitely the strongest winds I've ever felt in a hurricane. They were so strong that you could not physically go out of that garage. You were stuck in there. When I did come out in the morning and the feeder bands were still gusting, some of them well over 100, the wind actually knocked me over. At one point, my arm slammed into one of the brass railings there on the building, and I thought my arm was broke. You know, that pain where you see white and you're getting dizzy. And I thought, great, I broke. I'm about to shoot with my other hand now. But fortunately, it didn't. And then I had to literally sit down and put my arm around that railing and shoot from there until the feeder band. A lot of people don't realize hurricanes have that, especially at the beginning, and they have the feeder bands that come through with these individual strong little squalls, and you have to kind of time your shooting in between these to get the best images. So yeah, it was a beatdown. Hurricanes are really difficult even now, and I stay in great shape for my age. They beat the heck out of you. It's a real battle because, again, I'm not in a car chasing. Generally, I'm out in the storm, in the surge when I shoot, and it's like a heavyweight prize fight.
So I loved the description that you gave of the winds. You said that it was like the devil was screaming, and I can only, I can't even, I have tried to imagine what that must be like, and I can't even conceive it in my head. So, the winds have calmed down and you're finally able to kind of get out and see. So describe what you saw, the destruction, the effects of the storm. What did you see? What sticks with you after 30 years of time passing from that event, and what did that do to kind of teach you about this hurricane that was so much more unique from other storms that you had seen?
Well, the first thing I learned was you have to respect the storm surge, and I'm all about the storm surge. I'm Mr. Storm Surge. I like to be, again, out there in it as close as I can, but I respected it because full-size boats, yachts had been washed up to the base of the parking garage. There was debris everywhere. And I'm thinking, I'm glad I didn't go out there. You can't see this debris when it's blowing 140, 50 miles per hour. You're not going to see it. It's going to hit you long before you see it. So I had a deep respect at that point for A, the storm surge, and B, the debris that flies around during a hurricane, which is one reason I don't like to be in a car. You can have a billboard or one of the little eddies within the flow pick up something like a tornado and slam you. So I had a lot of respect. I also had a lot of respect for what people lost, because I actually could hear people sobbing as I went down towards the marina, and some of the boats had been destroyed. And they live on these boats. A lot of people do. And there was just complete destruction down there. A few boats survived. They tied them down right, but you could hear people literally sobbing over losing things. And you would look down on the ground and there'd be somebody's photo album or their personal belongings and things like that. So it humbled me in the sense of, here's this massive destruction I just survived, and all these crazy images, the palm trees completely taken apart. They look like a toothpick. And then on the other side, you look down, you see people's personal property and things. So it's kind of a weird thing. And this happens in journalism where you have the one side is power and destruction. Then you have the human side, and you have to kind of sometimes separate those things, or I think it would really bother you.
Wow, that's amazing. So since that time, you've seen other hurricanes come through. You mentioned Katrina in 2005, that probably being the other top tier, hurricane that we've had since then. So what lessons have you carried with you in your career going forward, and different aspects of life that you learned from Andrew, and what wisdom do you have to impart to, folks who are moving to coastal areas that may experience a hurricane for the first time? And with the advent of social media, there's a lot more, I would call them amateur storm chasers, and people that whether they technically really qualify as a chaser or not, or just somebody that's just going for the viral video. What recommendations and advice do you have for those people based on your experiences with Andrew?
The best advice I can give people is to plan early. Don't wait 3-4 days for the hurricanes. There are a lot of people do that nowadays. We're in a society now with social media. We want to see it. We want to see the tornado coming, or we want to see the hurricane that it's going to hit me. People want confirmation. And I think people will hesitate more now with gas prices, for example. They may not want to leave as early. They may not, but they can't do that. You've got to plan early, and you've got to get out of there. You've got to avoid the crowds. If you wait to the last moment, you may get stuck in traffic. You don't want to do that. So the thing to do is to really get out of there early. If you live in an area that's prone to flooding or surge or high winds, get out of there early. It's going to be a lot easier on you than waiting till the last moment. That's the best advice I can give someone is not to wait until the last moment. There's some areas that are just prone to storm surge. You have to get out of those areas. Again, you can't wait. I've driven through areas that are prone to storm surge, and I've gotten out of there with literally minutes to spare before those areas were moonscaped. And that's really frightening. So don't wait. Get out of there. You'll be a lot less stressed, and it's just so much easier to do.
So the last thing I'll ask you, and I know that there are folks who are wondering about this, especially with, again, talking about social media hyping things up and a lot of discussion between what's true, what's not, all those things.
Yep.
As far as this hurricane season, what are you seeing as far as this season, and what are you seeing as far as all the expectations that are being thrown around and all of the different truths and not quite truths and those kind of things? We talked about this a little bit before, we started recording. What have you seen for this hurricane season, and based on your experience, what are kind of your expectations to see this year?
Well, this hurricane season's obviously late. I mean, we haven't had one big storm in August, and we probably won't. I don't want to say that positively, but it looks like it's going to be a late season. But you got to remember, we still have all of September, which is 30 days. And I usually consider the first, second week in October still as hurricane season. There's a lot of time left, and it only takes one big storm. The other thing is the Gulf is completely undisturbed. There's no upwelling of cooler water. And sometimes that matters when you have storms moving across and one after another. They can have an effect on each other, and it may somewhat limit their ability to become really strong. So we have an undisturbed Atlantic and Gulf, so anything can happen, and it only takes one big storm, a Katrina, a Camille, and Andrew, and that's a big problem. It's not always the bunch of little storms. It's that one big one you got to watch for.
Well, Warren Faidley, thank you so much for joining me. I know that today is a big deal for you and for younger people like me that I don't remember Andrew. I was just over a year old, so I wasn't really a part of that, and I was here in Texas, so I had the best seats in the world to just be able to watch it on TV. But I know that this is a big day for folks that may still be, have effects from that storm, and folks that can relate in other parts of the Gulf. So thank you so much for joining me, and wish you the best. And I'm looking forward to seeing. I know that you've kind of slowed down. You're not working as much, but I look forward to following any kind of future work that you might do.
Yeah, still go out for the big events. If it's a big hurricane, big tornado outbreak, something like that, you'll catch me out there just like the old days. But I have a lot of catching up on stuff I missed out years ago. I'm trying to catch up with some of those pursuits.
Well, just give us real briefly, just kind of give us the best way to follow you and the work that you'll be doing in the future.
I'm on most of social media, on Twitter. That's mainly where I go because it's quick and easy, and it's under Cyclone Cowboy. You can look at my website, stormchaser.com, and there's a lot of pictures on there and video, and that's the best way to do it. I'm on Facebook and some of the other ones, but Twitter's the main one. Again, it's quick and easy to post on there, and all my adventures are on there, and they'll be on there this year. As soon as we have a hurricane, I'll be blasting off.
Warren Faidley, thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Take care.